A shadow swept across the North Atlantic. High above, blotting out stars and reflecting sunlight, like a blade hung over Earth's throat, the Galactic Coalition's flagship, the Resolute, hovered in low orbit. Its hull, plated in obsidian alloy and wreathed in shifting field of energy, bristled with artillery that could vaporize entire cities in seconds. Inside the command bridge, Admiral Vectrainer stood tall, his clawed hands folded behind his back, his long cape of woven nanosilk barely brushing the polished black floor. He was twice the size of a human, with blue-tinted scales layered over dense muscle, a pair of cybernetic ridges arching from his brow and snaking down his spine. His voice, when he spoke, held the lilt of aristocracy and the coldness of a predator. "Tell me again," he said, not looking away from the projection of Earth rotating slowly before him. "They use what exactly?" Commander Horrocks, a pale-skinned Kralian officer with 6 mechanical fingers twitching nervously, cleared his throat. "Ballistics, sir. Projectile-based weapons. Slug throwers. Snipers, mostly." "Snipers," Vec repeated, savoring the word like a joke that hadn't finished unfolding. "How quaint." Horrocks shifted. "They've already taken out 2 of our perimeter recon units. Headshots, sir. From over a mile out. No warning, no trace. Just impact." Vec's laugh was deep and vibrating, echoing off the curved steel walls of the command deck. A few junior officers flinched, uncertain whether it was humor or fury. "We come from 1,000 systems, equipped with grav tanks, particle blades, quantum-guided railguns, and they answer us with hunting rifles." Horrocks remained silent. He'd seen the footage. He'd studied the wounds. Those weren't hunting rifles. The Admiral turned from the viewport and strode to the center of the bridge, where a 3-dimensional projection of Earth's surface pulsed with glowing red threat zones. "Tell me, Commander, why hasn't this backwater planet submitted like the others?" "Because they're human, sir." That made Vec pause. His tongue flicked between his teeth. "Explain." "They're stubborn, proud. They remember every insult. They strike when you least expect it. And they don't fear death the way other species do." The Admiral gave a low grunt of disinterest. "Romantic nonsense. What they are is obsolete. Primitive mammals, hiding behind crumbling stone and rusted steel. The only thing they understand is power. And today," he raised one armored hand, "they will see it demonstrated." Below them, Earth's major cities were about to receive a live transmission, a speech of unity and conquest. The final offer before orbital bombardment began. That was the Coalition's protocol. One last chance to kneel. Across the warship, technicians activated communication relays and signal amplifiers. Satellites were hijacked, frequencies overridden. Vec cleared his throat and smiled, revealing silver fangs. "Begin transmission." On Earth, televisions flickered, digital billboards froze, smartphones went dead, all replaced by the image of Admiral Vectrainer, regal and monstrous in equal measure. "To the citizens of Earth," he began, voice crisp and clear across every device on the planet. "You have defied the Coalition's terms. You have rejected the mercy offered to lesser species. You cling to your outdated ways, to your mud, your flags, your bullets. This arrogance is not bravery. It is suicide." Far below, amidst the cold wind sweeping through an alpine forest in the Bavarian Alps, Captain Elias Rourke adjusted the scope on his rifle. He lay prone atop a disused NATO communication tower, camouflaged under thermal netting and broken branches. The old structure creaked with the weight of age and defiance. His hands, wrapped in weathered gloves, moved with precision born from decades of discipline. Next to him, Private Kellen lay shivering beneath a heap of gear, his eyes fixed on a tablet streaming the Coalition broadcast. "He's live," Kellen whispered. "Your window's closing, sir." "I know," Rourke replied, steadying the barrel of his long-range kinetic rifle. The weapon wasn't standard issue. Not anymore. It was custom-built from stolen Coalition alloys, retrofitted with human mechanics, and a phase-piercing slug designed for one task: cutting through shields. He didn't look at the screen. He didn't need to see Vec's face to know exactly where it was. "He's laughing at us again," Kellen muttered. "He called you a primitive." Rourke didn't respond. He adjusted for wind. Back aboard the Resolute, Vec's voice continued, swelling with theatrical pride. We offered you civilization. We offered you purpose. But you chose to bark like dogs in the dark, hoping your whimpers would scare away the stars. A technician on the bridge, young and arrogant, chuckled. They really do believe those rifles matter. Let them fire, Vec said with a wave. Let them scream. It will not change what comes next. Kellen tapped the rangefinder. 22 miles. Atmospheric scatter minimal. We got a 4-second open window between shield sweeps. That's the shot, sir. Copy. Rourke exhaled slowly, letting his heartbeat settle into rhythm. He saw the shimmer of the orbital ship, just a speck in the heavens. The glass deck, the movement behind it, the head. He remembered the first wave, coalition drones turning his city to ash. He remembered the smell, the screams, the silence afterward. One shot. Not vengeance. Not glory. Correction. Vec turned to one of the cameras, smiling wider. Let this be your lesson, Earth. Your final moment as free beings. You should have bent the knee. Rourke's finger closed gently on the trigger. Crack. No sound echoed. The air barely noticed. But the slug soared, punched upward through thinning atmosphere, riding physics no alien ever cared to study. And it was still rising. Vec raised a hand for dramatic effect. Because now you'll be remembered. His words turned to wet gurgles. A sudden jerk snapped his head to the side as the bullet slammed through his eye and exited with a burst of brain matter and blood across the glass panel. He dropped forward, limp. The bridge fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Horrocks' eyes widened. What was that? The technician froze. It came from the planet. A shot from the surface. Through our shields. Yes. Direct hit. Horrocks stared at the body, then the cameras, then the silent stream to Earth. Rourke adjusted his scope again, slowly packing his gear. Hit confirmed, he said. Kellen stared at him like he was made of myth. You actually did it. Rourke shrugged, slinging the rifle over his back. He talked too long. In cities across Earth, the broadcast ended in chaos. The final words of Galactic Tyrant interrupted by death in real time. Resistance fighters cheered. Civilians ran into the streets. Someone painted a crude mural on a wall, a rifle crosshair over a crown. Rourke disappeared into the trees. Back on the Resolute, alarms flared. Officers shouted. Command scrambled for leadership. But in the silence that followed the Admiral's fall, only one truth remained, one undeniable, unshakable reality. Earth's snipers weren't primitive. They were precise. And the galaxy had just been given its first taste of fear. Wind whispered to the upper Alps, tugging at torn flags and rusted metal scaffolding that had long since outlived its purpose. Atop a forgotten military relay station built in the Cold War's dying breath, Captain Elias Rourke lay motionless beneath a veil of snow-dusted camouflage netting. His breath was slow and controlled, steaming faintly into the frigid air as he peered through the massive scope of a rail-stabilized sniper rifle. The silence here was absolute. No birds, no engines, not even a faint hum of drones. Just ice, mountains, and focus. Private Kellen shifted beside him, trying not to shiver as he checked the atmospheric monitors embedded in his tablet. The numbers glowed with clinical precision. Wind direction, humidity, particle density, electromagnetic interference from the ship above. It's almost time. Their shielding rotates in 90-second pulses. One window. For seconds clean. Rourke didn't blink. That's enough. Kellen exhaled slowly. Sir, this is orbital. No one's ever. I'm not no one, Rourke said flatly. He didn't say it with pride. He said like fact, like gravity or recoil. Kellen had heard the stories. Some said Rourke had taken out 3 alien warlords in a single night during the resistance uprising in Uganda. Others claimed he once fired a shot that traveled 2 miles through a sandstorm and still hit dead center. But legends didn't matter out here. Not with a kill shot that had to climb 22 miles and bypass technology 10 generations ahead of their own. Trajectory calibration holding, Kellen said, trying to keep his voice steady. Wind down to 4 knots westward drift. Radiation scatter from their lower hull is stable, confirming thermal sync complete. The weapon Rourke held was unlike anything officially listed in Earth's remaining arsenals. It had no designation, no serial numbers, no manufacturer. Its frame was matte black, its internals partially alien, harvested from broken coalition drones and re-engineered in the underbelly of resistance labs. The slug it chambered was a hybrid, tungsten core, antimatter tip, velocity jacketed with a phase stabilizer. Theoretically, it could punch through particle fields. Practically, they were about to find out. Kellen glanced at him again. You sure about this? No. You scared? No. Liar. A faint smile touched Rourke's lips, barely there. Scare men pull too early. I'm waiting. Above them, invisible to the naked eye, the Resolute crawled across low orbit like a dark crown. Even with the Admiral's skull now a red smear across the observation glass, the ship's automated systems continued on their path. Cold and indifferent, they hadn't fired. Not yet. No retaliation. That was what made Rourke nervous. Something was coming. Back on the bridge, command authority had fallen into Horrocks' trembling hands. The remaining officers scrambled to assess the damage. Internal AI systems looped critical failure warnings. Medical droids had already collected what was left of Admiral Vec Traynor and zipped it into a stasis bag, though half the bridge was still painted with him. The projectile came from the planet. One technician stammered. It bypassed all defensive layers, deflector field, hull shielding, kinetic dampeners. Sir, it phased through our armor. That shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't, Horrocks hissed, his mandibles clicking with unease. And yet our Admiral's gray matter is decorating the windows. Should we retaliate? Orbital barrage. Horrocks considered it. Vec would have incinerated 10 cities by now in pure rage. But Horrocks wasn't Vec. He was calculating, cautious. He understood fear as a weapon, and now the humans had just used it. Not yet. Pull us into high orbit. I want every sensor on that continent pointed at whatever fired that shot. Back on the mountain, Rourke reached down to adjust the frequency dial on the rifle's embedded transmitter. Still tracking the secondary signals? Affirmative, Kellen replied. They're triangulating. Guess they want to know where the shot came from. We're going to have incoming fast. Dropships, seekers, maybe even orbital eyes. Then we'll move fast. Rourke slung the rifle over his shoulder, breaking it down into transportable segments and placing each with methodical care into a carbon line case. He didn't rush. Precision mattered more than speed right now. You get the drone up? Yeah, it's climbing now. We'll feed ghost echoes into 5 dummy locations. Should buy us 10 minutes. Make it 15. They slipped from the tower and down a frost-covered maintenance ladder, vanishing into the woods like ghosts. Kellen kept glancing up at the sky, half expecting the wrath of God to fall on them in light and plasma. But the skies remained silent. That unsettled him more. Sir, do you think the shot actually changed anything? Rourke stopped in the middle of the trail. He turned, and for the first time since Kellen had known him, his voice had weight behind it. Not cold calculation, but something closer to belief. They didn't think we could. That's the point. Far behind them, up in orbit, coalition war councils had already begun emergency sessions. Tactical officers screamed for protocols to be rewritten. Military scientists argued over whether a Class 4 planet could reverse engineer anything capable of bypassing orbital shielding. And somewhere deeper, in the shadowed corridors of the Coalition's command nexus, a single word repeated like a virus. Sniper. No one had seen it. No one had tracked the bullet. No automated defense had triggered. No sensor had picked up the heat signature. It was as if death had simply appeared inside the Admiral's skull. And that made it worse, because it meant the enemy wasn't just capable. It meant they were invisible. Back in the forest, Rourke and Kellen reached their extraction point, a buried transport sled hidden under sheets of camo mesh and disguised to mimic thermal background noise. Rourke activated the ignition node, and the sled rumbled awake, silent and smooth over snow. Kellen climbed in beside him. Where to? South. We'll leap across the spine to Italy, then rendezvous with Cell Echo. More shots like that one? different targets. Same message. As the sled hissed away into the white silence, Kellen glanced at the man beside him. Elias Rourke didn't look like a savior. He didn't carry himself like a legend. He looked tired, rough around the edges, older than his years, and as unremarkable as any other resistance fighter. And yet, somewhere up there in the emptiness of space, entire star systems were reconsidering their assumptions about Earth. One bullet, no warning, no apology, just consequence. And now, the consequence had a name. The stars wouldn't forget it. Admiral Vec Trainor's body had barely cooled, but the echo of his death spread across the coalition like a solar flare ripping through silence. Entire command networks paused. Warships on the edge of distant systems froze in orbit, captains and AI cores replaying the same footage, frame by frame. The moment the most decorated military figure in coalition history was cut down in the middle of his triumph. One instant, confidence. The next, collapse. On the bridge of the Resolute, a sour tension lingered. Vec's blood still speckled the observation glass like an accusation. Command crews moved stiffly, aware the camera is still rolling, of billions of humans watching across the planet below. No one dared speak Vec's name. Commander Horrocks stood where Vec had stood, his claws twitching behind his back. His voice came out softer, less confident, less imperial. "End the transmission," he said, eyes locked on the streak of crimson staining the Admiral's cloak. The technician hesitated. "We're still live, sir." I said end it. With a keystroke, the feed vanished. And in that vacuum on Earth, a wave of silence swept across cities, forests, resistance bunkers, and shattered ruins. The image of the bullet, the drop, the sudden collapse, every frame had burned itself into the collective memory. Some wept, some shouted. Others, like soldiers crouched in forgotten trenches, simply smiled and loaded fresh rounds into their rifles. In a command tent deep beneath the ruins of Brussels, General Armand Kellis removed his cracked helmet and turned to the surrounding officers. "Did we confirm it was Rourke?" A scout nodded. "Confirmed." Operative Kellen reported successful extraction and no trace left behind. "Rourke's gone dark again." Kellis ran a hand over his face, tired. "Good." A junior officer raised a hand. "Sir, we have active recruitment spikes across 4 continents. 17 resistance cells have declared full-scale insurgency in the last 3 hours. They're calling it the shot heard across the stars." Another added, "We've intercepted coalition fleet chatter. They're pulling back from at least 3 occupied zones to reevaluate orbital defense protocols." Kellis smiled grimly. "So they bleed." Rourke had always told them, "It's not about numbers. It's not about firepower. It's about memory. Make them remember we don't vanish quietly." Above them, the Resolute slowly rose into higher orbit away from Earth's gravity well. Commander Horrocks paced the upper deck, his mind calculating variables faster than the ship's AI. "Who was he?" he asked aloud, though no one answered. The AI responded instead, unbidden. "Unknown sniper. No thermal trace. Projectile. Hybridized technology. Trajectory estimated from European continent. Probability of human origin, 98%. Horrocks clenched his jaw. "He made a fool of us." "One man." The AI processed silently before replying. "One man capable of targeting a high command admiral aboard a warship in orbit with no support, no warning, and no post-strike signature suggests an unacceptable variable in planetary control. In plain language, he can do it again." That thought stuck. The war had always been about symbols. The coalition moved with overwhelming force and visible might, not only to conquer, but to instill psychological obedience. They didn't just burn cities. They made sure survivors remember how easy it had been. They didn't execute. They broadcast it. But now, the humans had flipped the script. Their shot wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was surgical, precise, silent, and it carried a message. You are not untouchable. On a remote outpost in the Falcar cluster, a young alien conscript watched the recording for the 5th time. He paused at the moment Vec's skull detonated, brows furrowed with disbelief. His older brother, a veteran of 2 planetary campaigns, shook his head beside him. They're still just primitives, he muttered. The younger one didn't respond. He kept watching. On the edge of the galaxy, a shadowy council of the Coalition's high war chamber convened in a sealed hall, shielded from all communications. They spoke in hushed tones, nervous for the first time in centuries. It's not the shot itself, one of them said. It's what follows. The belief. Another chimed in. He showed them that we can die, that our power isn't infinite. He showed them we're reachable. From the edge of a snowy ridge in the Dolomites, Rourke watched the stars through old binoculars, not trusting digital optics. Kellen sat beside him, sipping hot water from a survival flask, trying to process the scope of what they'd done. They're calling you the ghost of gravity, Kellen said with a crooked smile. Resistance's top operatives are name-dropping you like legend. Rourke didn't smile back. That's the problem with legends. People expect them to live forever. He hadn't fired that shot for fame. He'd done it because someone had to, because no committee would ever approve an assassination mission against a galactic admiral, because no drone could make that shot through 22 miles of moving space and unpredictable energy shielding, because machines second-guess, but Rourke never had. Kellen's voice softened. Do you think they'll come for us? They already are. A moment of silence passed between them. Wind rattled the trees below, and the stars twinkled without concern. I don't know what happens next, Kellen admitted. Rourke stood, slinging his rifle case over his back. Doesn't matter. We don't stop. He stepped into the tree line, vanishing into shadows like smoke. Hours later, on a screen in a Coalition War tent near what was once Los Angeles, an officer stared at a new report. Another admiral. Another shot. Dead before he hit the floor. No footage this time. No transmission. Just silence. And a hole where a leader used to be. The officer turned pale. We've lost another. In a darkened chamber high in the orbital bastion of Cathun, a solitary Coalition elder stared at the pattern emerging on his holomap. Dots connected. Deaths marked in red. All clean. All human. His whisper barely carried beyond the marble silence. They're not just fighting back anymore. They're hunting us.